Alright, so this is exam 3, question 9. Again, finding the same idea, or I guess finding an equation of a graph, which is a parabola. So over here, we found that the equation of the graph could be found by, number one, finding an x-intercept. Finding an x-intercept. X-intercept can be made into a factor, x plus 9, x minus 3, plug those back up in here, and then use another point, 0, 9, in place of x and y, or x and f of x, and then calculate your a value based on that equation that's kind of been filled in. And then when you get your a value, plug that a value back into your general equation and find out that f of x equals negative 1/3 times x plus 9 times x minus 3. And if we take that out, I guess we're gonna need this in a different form, because we're gonna find out what this looks like. If I FOIL out x plus 9 times x minus 3, I'm gonna rewrite this kind of in general form. This would be x squared plus 6x minus 27. Multiply the negative 1/3 to everything in here. F of x then equals negative 1/3 x squared minus 2x plus 9. That would be an equivalent statement right here. Instead of in factored form, we could call it in general form, negative 1/3 x squared minus 2x plus 9. And we're going to find a different way to solve the same parabola in a different way. So we're going to go to the next page and see now we've got the same information, same parabola. I'm just going to erase that information or kind of show you that it's in a different page that's blank, and we're going to kind of walk through a different way to find this parabola. So here is our parabola once again, and I'm looking for I'm going to create this parabola using the formula f of x equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And I'm going to look for, again, h and k are, or I guess my vertex is h and k, because this is vertex form or standard form. Vertex at h comma k. What is my vertex? Well, let's see. I can look at it. I can find that vertex one of two ways. I can look here and I can say, I think my vertex is right there. That vertex, it would be at negative 3, positive 12. Negative 3, positive 12. And I'm going to confirm that just by saying that that axis of symmetry, or I guess the vertex is on the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is halfway between these two x-intercepts. X-intercept at negative 9. Let's see, negative 9. X-intercept at positive 3. If we average these out, it should be somewhere right between these two. Negative 9 plus 3. Negative 9 plus 3 divided by 2 should be exactly where my axis of symmetry is, and that's where my x-axis should, or the x component of my vertex should be. Negative 9 plus 3 is negative 6, divided by 2, negative 3. X equals that component. X equals negative 3. Sure enough, x equals negative 3. So my h is negative 3, my k is 12. So I'm going to plug those numbers in over here, f of x, and I'll be most of the way to my solution. A times x minus h would be minus negative 3. That would be plus 3 squared plus k plus 12. And I'm partly there. And now I've got to find another point. I have to find any other point that crosses, that's on the parabola, that crosses a hash mark. I could use either that point is 0, 9, because that crosses over. I could use this point, and that would be 3, 0. I could use that point, because that crosses over the hash mark. That would be negative 9, 0. Any of those parts are x, f of x. So I can use any of those points. Let's use 3, 0 just for fun, just because it's got a 0 in it. My x component is 3, so I'm going to go up here, I'm going to write in blue my x component. My x component becomes 3. My f of x component is 0, so there's my 0. F of x becomes 0. And all the rest of the stuff kind of remains the same. A, don't know what A is. Plus 3 stays the same, squared stays the same, plus 12 stays the same, and all I did was replace an x, f of x, with a point that I know, x 3, f of x 0. And now I just solve for A. I've got one equation in red and blue with one variable, A, and all I do is solve. I get 0 equals A times 6 squared plus 12, ugly squared, that's a squared. 0 equals 36A plus 12, and I'm just going to solve now. Subtract 12 from each side. Negative 12 equals 36A. Divide by 36. Divide by 36. I've got negative 1/3 equals A, and sure enough, from my previous example, I had, of the same parabola, I had A equals negative 1/3, so far so good. A equals negative 1/3, and now all I'm going to do is take this information, this A equals negative 1/3 that we just calculated, and kind of plug it back up into here. I'm going to take my A equals negative 1/3, plug it in. F of x, from my red equation up here, f of x equals A. I know now that it equals negative 1/3 times, and all this stuff just remains the same. X plus 3, quantity squared, plus 12. And I'm done. I think, to be honest with you, I would say I would be done with that right there. F of x equals negative 1/3 times x plus 3 squared plus 12. Done. I've got a vertex at negative 312. Negative 312, sure enough. A is negative, so that means he's got a frowny face. Okay, that looks pretty good. And negative 1/3, well, I'll take my word for it that I did my calculations correctly, and I think I'm moving on. But you know what? Just for fun, back here I got f of x equals negative 1/3 times x plus 9 times x minus 3 from using my factors in blue and green. I got to here, and I rewrote, instead of my factored form, I wrote it out in general form. And I'm going to compare this general form to the equation that I got here, and I'm going to have to convert this into general form. So let's just do that. F of x equals negative 1/3 times x plus 3 squared plus 12. First of all, you FOIL this out, and I would get f of x equals negative 1/3 times, if you FOIL that out, it becomes x squared plus 6x plus 9, and all I did was FOIL out the x plus 3 quantity squared, and I wrote it right there. Plus 12 still stays as plus 12. Distribute the negative 1/3, I get f of x equals negative 1/3 x squared minus 2x minus 3, and all I did was distribute that negative 1/3 to all the terms. Plus 12 still remains the same. Final step, combine like terms. Negative 1/3 x squared minus 2x. Negative 3 plus 12 combines to make a plus 9, and this circled form is the same as this circled form, and all I did now is convert the standard form into a general form by distributing, multiplying, combining like terms. And there's my standard form, or sorry, general form there at the very bottom right. There's my general form at the very bottom right. Using both formats, I got to the same answer. F of x equals negative 1/3 x squared minus 2x plus 9. F of x equals negative 1/3 x squared minus 2x plus 9. Minus 2x plus 9 minus 2x plus 9, 1/3 x squared minus negative 1/3 x squared. Sure enough, going either way, whether we use in blue the roots or the x-intercepts to create a factor and then put those into factored form. Use an f of x form in green to plug in x, plug in x, plug in f of x, find out what your A is, create the form. That would be okay. Or whether you want to find, or whether you're given, I suppose, the vertex. If you're given the vertex, plug it into the vertex form. From the red vertex form, plug in x and f of x that we know, either that point or that point or that point. Any point you want to choose, it doesn't really matter, but just make sure you put in x where the x goes, the f of x where the f of x goes, and then calculate your a. A is negative 1/3, and there's in green right here, that would be okay right there as a form. And you'd be done because you've shown me you've calculated your a, and you've calculated your, or you created your form of a parabola in either this format, in the vertex form, or in the factored form. Either way is going to be okay.